All right. Thank you and welcome to all of you. Thanks for being here for this, our first hybrid live and Zoom meeting for the Neskowin Community Plan. I'm Rand Cook. I'm the chair of the steering committee that's been working on this for a while. And this is well, I guess we took a poll at the last general meeting, but this is the first of a number of meetings we're holding to get your input and get dialogue with you, old style, both live, and hopefully that we can integrate that into, with the Zoom participants also. We really want to hear from you how you feel about these different value statements, because that's how we can fine tune them and they can reflect the community and what the community cares about and would like to see in its looking into the future. So we provided you the current value statements for what the community plan holds now, that is our working document that we're in the process of revising. So these are the current value statements, and we can fine tune and work on those as a community in the next number of months. And we just want to make sure you have, you know what they are, you've read through them, and you participate in fine tuning them so they reflect our community. So with that, I'll turn Tom. Simon is going to facilitate the meeting, and so I'll turn it over to Tom.
Yeah, actually, we're going to get an introduction from Sarah Apsher from the Tillamook County to give us some background and some kind of a direction that this conversation needs to go. And we really need to have it be a conversation. We don't want to be talking here. We want to hear from you. Sarah?
Well, hi, I am so excited to be here with all of you tonight. This is so great. I'm Sarah Apsher, the Director of Community Development, and helping you spearhead this process. And so just want to give just a very general and brief overview of the process as we start. There are some specific tasks that will start tonight, and then those will incrementally lead into other tasks. And there's quite a list of all of the things we're going to work on together as part of this process. So I won't spoil what we're going to do next. But just to kind of give you an overview, this process is actually called a legislative text amendment. So that's what we're doing. And what that means is that it's your community plan update, which is your land use planning document for your community, and potentially some ordinance work. The community plan informs development, right? So whatever's in your community plan, your policies, which are going to be the outcome of some of the exercises we're going to start tonight, those policies then are carried out through your zoning codes. What is allowed in the zone, your setbacks, your building heights, all of those things come from these policies. Neskowin and other communities in Tillamook County are unique in that you have these community plans. This isn't something that other communities across the state have. And basically how I would look at it is like a mini comp plan, comprehensive plan, right? Which is the county's larger overarching land use document. We created one special for Neskowin over 2 decades ago. It has not been updated since. So we're going to do a refresher, and the first part of it starts with this first step tonight. As these steps go along, what will eventually happen is we will have an updated document of your community plan, updated ordinance changes, that then I will bring forward to the Board of County Commissioners and the Tillamook County Planning Commission to take action on and decide whether or not they want to adopt them. So Guy is your Planning Commission member. He's been on the planning commission for several years and he is outstanding. You're very fortunate to have him on there. He's great. He's great. And honestly, he makes me think about things sometimes, that even I don't think about. So we have some good conversations. So Guy is here, but Guy's role will transition as well, because I will bring all of this work forward to Guy and the other 6 planning commission members. There's a very legalistic process that I have to follow, including criteria, right? So the decision of whether or not some of the changes that are proposed are adopted or not will be based on a specific set of criteria. So as we go through this process, what my job is to think about those criteria and that process to make sure when we get to that point, we're teed up and ready to go. It'll go to the planning commission, all of it together, we'll package it up. The planning commission will hear from me. There will be probably 2 public hearings. All of you can come and participate in that as well. Definitely expect feedback from the CAC for that, sorry, I skipped a step. We'll go to the CAC first before we go to the planning commission. I won't bring it forward until the CAC as a whole has a chance to vote on this. Take it to the planning commission. They make a recommendation. The planning commission is not the decision maker in this process. The board of county commissioners are. So work with the planning commission. Some of the work that we do may be modified. It may shift, it may change. We are starting a process where these documents and this work is living and breathing until the board makes a decision, the board of commissioners. So they will decide to either approve all of the changes. They could decide to approve some of the changes, or, they could make their own changes as it goes forward. The planning commission, when it gets to the planning commission, could also recommend that changes be made. So I'm thinking from start to finish with all of the steps, probably about 6 months is what we're in for. Maybe a little longer by the time we get everything done. This work, because this is a legal process, can also be appealed. So who participated, who was around for the Neskowin Coastal Hazards Overlay? That was a big deal. Raise your hand. Hi, can't see. Put on my glasses on. Yeah, up, yeah. All right, okay, thank you. That process actually got appealed. We ended up going to what's called the Land Use Board of Appeals, which is a state appeal body. So if someone wants to challenge the work that Tillamook County does, that I do, that we are doing now, they can actually appeal it to a state level appeals court. And there's actually 2 that they can appeal it to. So it's not over until it's over, right? The other thing is that, again, my role in this is to make sure that I protect the integrity of your process. That I make sure that the changes and the things that we're talking about fit within the framework of those criteria. That I know that the processes that we're following, I'm going to help to try to really think about minimizing those roads for appeals later. And also how we get through a clean process efficiently and quickly with the planning commission and the board. So tonight we take the first step. This is super exciting. And then just look forward to working with you. We'll talk about next steps as we go on. I could give you the laundry list today, but none of you are going to remember. And some of those steps might kind of actually shift through until we get to the hearing. So does anybody have any questions for me? Guy.
Sorry, not a question, but I want to emphasize one of the important things for the planning commission is participation by the community in the process. And so this is critical as it moves forward. Future participation is critical because ultimately when a plan is delivered, that's going to be one of the first questions asked. Who was involved? How many were involved? Did you have a sense of the community? Were there dissenting opinions and what were they about? How were they resolved or not resolved? So this process that we have is very important as we go through it. So encourage everyone one way or another to keep involved until we're done.
It's a question. There's a lot of moving parts but, you know, there's some, you said there were criteria and the legal, so. I'm trying to phrase that.
Sure.
Just popped in my head here.
And that was a
But-
very high overview that
But,
probably was
right.
not helpful.
So there's a lot of layers of, you know, that, the criteria, the state,
Yeah,
you know, planning, then the commissioners. You know, as a group, people come together and say this, but then at virtually every juncture, it can be, well, we can't do that, no.
Yeah.
It's not allowed, so
that's right.
this isn't just window dressing then.
It
Or
is, it is not.
you know, that it's already sort of what we're gonna be is not already decided. It's
There
my
are-
question.
That's a great question, and thank you for asking that. There are some things that are already decided, just to be honest with
But
everybody.
so we can know these things though upfront.
That's right.
So we're not, you know, getting
right.
excited about doing this and that and then
So
like.
no casino.
No casino. I know, I know.
It's been my long-term goal. Where am I going? That's what I'm gonna do.
But no, but you're right, and that's where, you know, sometimes, you know, I'm gonna be sorry, you know, we can't do this. Or there's some things that I will vet through legal counsel as we move along, and, you know, I'm gonna have we're all gonna have homework as we go through this.
No, I'm not being
Yeah.
adversarial, I just was curious,
It's a great
how-
question.
you know,
You don't wanna waste your time.
yeah,
basically.
exactly, yeah. Get all
Yeah.
excited about, or, you know, let's go this and then,
Well, and that's part of my job too, and it's not my most favorite part of my job or my role, but if I know something isn't going to work, I don't want you to waste your time.
oh, that's what hope.
Yeah, or lead to this big disappointment of something that, you know, I don't say anything and then you find out at the end, sorry, that's not gonna work. I don't want that to happen.
That's just what I was, you know,
Yeah.
just where, you know,
Absolutely.
there's all these levels of criteria, that, you know, so.
And we'll bring those in and out of the fold, like tonight, those criteria with the work that we're doing don't really apply yet. They will play a role later, but not yet. The other thing I would say to Guy's point about participation and involvement, we have sign-in sheets. Please sign them because we're gonna keep those. And I actually, as part of my staff report, when we get to that place where we're ready for hearings, one of the things that I enjoy writing about the most for the planning commission and the board is the level of citizen and community involvement. That is so important, and I want to memorialize that. But I need y'all to help me do that by making sure that you're participating, you're writing letters, that you're signing it, so that we can capture all that.
So Sarah, would you point out the specific role that the value statements play
Yeah,
in the process?
sure. So tonight, okay, can I talk to them? Can I tell them a little bit about what we're doing tonight? Just to,
Yeah.
okay, all right.
Yeah, sure.
It's not my show, so I don't know, like,
Sarah,
yes,
excuse me, Dana Buckley, could I ask a clarifying question?
yes, please.
When you talk about the Neskowin area and you say that we're fortunate that we're one of the communities that have this NCAC type of process going on, what geographic boundaries are we talking about?
So the boundaries, so I'm gonna say this a different way. It's like, I know where you're going.
Where does this one start? Where does it end?
Yes, okay. So I think that the real answer to that question is a personal opinion with everyone in this room. The technical question, the technical response to what you are asking me is that it applies to the properties that are within the community boundary. This planning document, because that's what we're working on, applies to the properties within the community boundary. And that is a boundary for purposes of what we're talking about tonight, because I want to make sure that everyone feels included and welcome in this process moving forward. The boundary was defined by state law. It was not defined by you. Does that make sense to everybody? That was a legal determination. And how it came about was decades ago, because this area of Neskowin was already developed, right? You guys have had like amazing homes and cabins here since the turn of the century. When the state developed its land use program and Senate Bill 100 is largely, there was actually a land use program in place going back to the 1920s, but it didn't apply everywhere. The state said in the 70s with Senate Bill 100, everybody's got to get their act together. Everybody has to have planning and zoning. It was no longer optional. Okay, and what that meant was everything started out on a slate of farm or forest. And then how that worked is the state, my predecessors, communities and others came together and said, where has development already occurred? Because there was this need, there was this legal need to honor existing property rights. So what happened was that your community boundary for purposes of the state of the county's land use program initially became defined and zoned based on what development existed here in the 70s. That's why you always had, since our zoning program went into effect, our first land use ordinance, our first zoning ordinance went into effect in 1969. This area of Neskowin already had residential zoning designations because it was recognized that this is where development had occurred. Places of South Slab Creek, places up north, they didn't have like, if they had this type of residential development, that boundary would be stretched, but they didn't because that's where you had those outer lines, more rural areas. In the late 1990s, the county, working with the community and others, my predecessor, Vic Affolter, I don't know if any of you remember him, and he was related to the Affolter family here. I was the last person he hired in 2000. And we still talk, it's great. But he, on his own accord, went to communities and the commissioners and said, our communities are unique. These are not cities, but they deserve to be heard and acknowledged as some sort of organized community that should have a voice. And so he worked with all of you and several of the communities in Tillamook County to develop these community plans. And part of that initial process was taking a look then at all of that residential zoning that we put together in, from 1969 to 1981 and said, let's clean this up. Let's tailor this more to Neskowin because your residential zones were the same as Barview and Pacific City and Oceanside. Everybody had a residential 1, a residential 2, and a residential 3. In that process, you guys ended up with Neskowin zones. Oceanside has Oceanside zones. Pacific City Woods has Pacific City Woods zones. So I've got like 40 zoning codes for y'all, to be honest, okay? Yeah, but it's okay. I really appreciate the work that went into that. That's where then the boundary became formalized. But it was the boundary based on those existing development rights that were predetermined by state law. It didn't mean that that was where the community ended. It meant by law, that's where largely your residential and commercial development rights were retained. And then everything else around it is rural, because that's what state law says we have to do. So I know that's a really long, the boundary. Okay, the boundary. The boundary that's been adopted by state law is the northern boundary of Sahali. It crosses 101. I believe the hills of Neskowin are included. It does not include all of Scherzinger Road. It does include Viking Estates. It follows down 101 to the art gallery. The golf course is in it, up through Hawk Creek Hills to those 4 or 5 properties that are part of that easement. That's the extension thereof. And then it drops down from Hawk Creek, from those properties, and it follows the boundary of Hawk Creek Hills. And then runs along 101 to where the water district is on the east side of the highway. The RV park is not in it. For whatever reason, and that's part of, honestly, when we started looking, when we talk about state law and development rights and where that boundary should have been, I am surprised that the RV park was not included. But it wasn't. Okay, so the RV park is not in the community boundary, but it starts at South Beach Road, where y'all cross the creek. And then it goes up South Beach to the end of the developed lots. And then it's everything west of one of them. That is your thing. I used to be the county cartographer. I had like 2 years.
What you're talking about, every step.
I can actually give you township ranges and sections if you want those. Here now. So that is your, for the purposes of state law, your state acknowledged adopted boundary for land use planning, where you can have sewer, where you can have homes on smaller lots, and where you can have commercial uses. That's that boundary. That's what this document is about. But again, I would stress, myself included, I recognize that the community ultimately extends beyond those lines. But for planning purposes, that's what we're doing. I know, I'm running out of time. I'm sorry.
Well, we can do it.
Okay, so, oh yeah, okay, so, oh man, I got, okay, I'm so excited to be here. So what we're doing tonight, I know, this is great. Okay, so what we're doing tonight, we're gonna work on vision and values. They are in your community plan already. You guys worked on these really hard a couple of decades ago. They might need a refresher. Things may have changed. What do they mean today? Do they mean the same thing? And when we talk about village, when we talk about safety, when we talk about neighborhoods, those mean different things to every single one of us. So as this committee does great work tonight to work with you to tease out what those things mean, please be vocal and participate, because those mean different things to every one of us. Those values and vision. The next step of that is then to go into the actual policies that are part of that land use document and see how they align. And if they don't align, then where are we at with the policies and what work do we need to be done? So we're starting at ground zero tonight with that conversation of what are your vision and values? And as you guys have those conversations, I'm already flipping in my mind forward to your policies, because I'm gonna start doing my homework to get ready for the subsequent meetings.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
You appreciate that.
I'm not talking for the rest of the time.
Unlikely to.
Well, you failed in being brief, which you promised you would be, but.
I was brief in the planning board.
We really appreciate the information. I should introduce what my role is. I'm the, apparently the editor of this document. It's rather a, if you looked at the current one, it's, maybe a bit hard to read. I know it was a bit hard for me to read. I promise you I will do everything I can to make it a bit more readable and a bit more logical. We're going to set it up such that we have the vision, the goals, and then the policies in that order. And we'll still have history in it, which this one currently does have a lot of good history. But we're going to put that towards the back, because that's very interesting, vital to keep, but that's not what it's about. It's about dealing with the land use. So what we want to do is we want to go through what we have here and see what's different, or what nuances might be different. Everybody can read this, sort of like the opinion about where Neskowin is. Everybody has an opinion, and you can look at that and say, yeah, I agree with that. But the person next to you might not agree with you in the same way. So what we're trying to do is verbalize it. And your input will help me to make a document which reflects what the community wants. So that's my goal. Make it clear, concise, and accurate. Okay. So let's go. So the first, absent anything else, we're going to go through these, and then we're going to ask if there are things that are not here that should be. So the first one is a place where safety, adequate utility services, and essential pedestrian streets are priorities. What does that mean? Anybody? It's gonna get really boring if I talk. Just
I'll try and be an icebreaker. So, and I'm gonna start with safety. So something that like I've heard a bunch is that people are worried that while they're out of town, like people are gonna break into their properties, and I've heard that people that does happen, and so. And maybe one of the reasons that is something that happens is that we I basically don't have any uniformed law enforcement here, period.
Mhm.
Is there any statistics on how much that, I mean, you know, I grew up here, I've been here for almost 55 years. There's always been, especially off season, you know, when, I mean, we all.
Yeah.
Have, you know, anecdotal. Is it worse now, or is it?
I don't know, I was just trying to break the ice.
Okay.
And I don't know if those statistics exist, like maybe the sheriff's
I'm
department
curious
has
if
them.
it's something is, you know, people feeling more.
Is a feeling of increasing safety, is that something we want? Nod, yes, no, we do care,
Yes.
okay. Good. Thank you.
You know, safety is such a broad word.
Yeah.
So it encompasses a lot of things, so, you know, we talked about, you know, safety, breaking in homes, people speeding down our streets. People who, you know, are walking at night, fall into a pothole and twist and break their ankle. I mean, so, I mean.
Sounds very specific.
So what I'm hearing you say is that there's, the aspects of it are really personal safety, but also accessibility, being able to get around, being able to be a part of the community. Any comments on, yes?
With regard to the homeowners' concerns, there are I know at least two, organizations or businesses here who do home checks. And they might want to check with them to find out about the rise or decrease of burglaries or vandalism or anything like that. And one of them, well, one of the fellows, Dave Hoder, lives here in Neskowin. And I don't know where the other one, I think, is in Netarts, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
And also, somebody mentioned the roads. It's the road, our Hawk Drive can get very congested with fast cars coming down here to the golf course. Summer people or weekenders. And that's a concern, safety wise.
Okay. Yes,
I think when we had the opportunity to vote to have a sheriff in this area, the county actually put a package together of how many burglaries there were, police, things like that. So that's, I think it's information that we can easily get.
okay,
Road wise, I think the community has changed a lot in the last 5 years. With roads becoming increasingly difficult to pass on. So Breakers Boulevard is the freeway in Neskowin. And there are no speed bumps on the freeway to slow the people down or to slow the golf carts down. And I think it has changed.
okay. So that's a value that wasn't necessarily apparent before, the fact that you have traffic. So having control of traffic is a
And
value.
I have to put in one last
Okay.
punchline. Our roads have deteriorated for years, and the only thing we see is the midnight paving crew filling the potholes. So I think safety wise, I mean, when you get some of these potholes in town, you're gonna lose your car.
Yeah.
So.
You've got a raised hand on them.
Yes,
So, yeah, Matt or Matthew?
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
you bet.
This is Matt Gill, and you know, with regards to, you know, people invading Neskowin for thievery, I've experienced this. I left the toolbox unlocked in my truck one night, and of course, they came through and cleaned it out, took a bunch of stuff. And I talked to the sheriff about it for quite a while, and he said, yep, there's a group of people that go up and down the coast, and they, in the wintertime, they break into houses and steal what they can. In the summertime, they break into people's cars and steal what they can. And it's a difficult problem that we have, and I don't know if there's a good solution, but I think that the box that controls the sewer system at the corner of Salem Avenue and the bridge that comes into Neskowin has cameras in it. And if that's the case, if we could make those cameras accessible, at least we might have a little bit of an advantage of capturing license plates or people that are driving in and out of Neskowin during times of vandalism. When my truck was robbed, one of my good friends 2 blocks away, his truck was robbed also. So they're clearly coming into town and making the rounds, and maybe those cameras would help us out. Thank you very much.
So, thank you. So if I could just restate, a value would be a way of increasing security through maybe some technological means. So that would be a value.
Yeah, it would be technological means that already exist. I think those
Okay.
cameras are there. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, I just wanted to,
Then, yeah.
I just wanted to reemphasize this concern of the potholes in our streets. I don't really quite understand why they're not taken care of by the county, because certainly we pay a lot of taxes. And I just wonder if other, like in Tillamook, the city of Tillamook, do they have potholes all over? Or are they filled?
You want me to answer that? But my colleague Chris isn't here. So, your property tax dollars do not go into the county road system. The county road fund is supported from the gas tax that, actually the state decides how much money public works gets to provide services for the county as a whole. There is a certain amount of money set aside each year for paving and road projects. It is my understanding in talking to Chris Lady that because of the bridge failures and the bridge ratings that we have had over the last several years, the majority of the money has gone into new bridges and bridge repairs.
Could I ask again, do you have any potholes in Tillamook?
Tillamook City is different, and they can use tax dollars for, that's why cities have nicer streets than county areas, because we're all rural unincorporated, so it's a completely different funding structure for roads.
Complicated misuse of.
Maybe, yeah. I have potholes too.
Did you have? I'm
Yeah.
sorry,
Go ahead, David.
Yeah, the term essential pedestrian street is a unique term, and we might want to try to define that. We've also got essential vehicular streets here.
yeah, I'm not quite sure what that means. That's a good point.
Yeah.
I think what it means basically, we're concerned about pedestrian safety on our
Yeah.
streets because they're so narrow.
And children riding bikes.
Yeah.
And children.
We got an order here, Fran, and then, you, and then you. Okay.
Okay, so one of the options that we have is to create road districts either in a neighborhood or wherever a group agrees they wanna have the roads fixed up, and they sort out what that would cost and what it would take to fund that annually. So you take responsibility and you figure out what it costs, and you get that work done every year, and your roads are less likely to break down if they're maintained on a regular basis rather than otherwise.
That's kind of the de facto way it's being done.
Yeah.
Privately, that's kind of what's being done. People privately chip in and fix the roads. And
Yeah, but there could be more equipment and professional services. That I like doing the road crew, but I do think that if people are upset and they feel like that's once a year or something, it's not enough. you can organize to solve that problem if you can find the right group of people in your neighborhood to deal with it. So that's an option, just saying.
One question here, and then you had a comment?
Well, I had I thought part of the, money from rentals, part of that was supposed to go to roads. And roads where? Because they're not here.
Okay.
I mean, literally, we're not getting, it appears from looking at South Beach, the private road association over there has a better solution to keeping and maintaining roads without potholes that will swallow your car than we do in the village. And, so I'm just curious as to how it seems like there's money everywhere, but not in asphalt repairing roads.
So, we're getting a little bit off track. Let's, okay, there, and then let's get back to visions.
Well, in one of the recommendations in 2001 was for skinny streets. And for Neskowin. And there is a definition, I think, in ORS about what is a skinny street and how it's used, what its purpose is, and whatever. It's kind of going to Dave's comment, what do these things mean? So the committee back then looked at that. They made that recommendation. It was not adopted by the county as part of our county plan. So the idea of like, how do we want our streets to reflect how we live here was dealt with back 25 years ago. Not approved by the county. It might be something if people want to look at the way our roads are used. How does it fit within the community vision of what Neskowin is? I think that's a good thing to do.
Yeah.
Maybe we can revisit, and I think our committee needs to go back to the statute and see what that definition is, and if there's other things we can use out of that.
I admit I was confused by the term skinny street, when I read.
It's a legal term in Oregon.
Okay.
So I had a suggestion for what it's worth based upon listening. And that one, I mean, there's been a lot about talk about road maintenance, which isn't captured in the existing statement. And so I'm sure this could be improved upon, but a place where safety, obviously we've talked about that, and that's all continues to be a priority. Adequate utility services, we haven't talked about that, but sure. So you could say adequate utility services and road maintenance and pedestrian friendly streets are priorities. I'm not sure what essential means, but so I just kind of change that up into pedestrian friendly streets.
I didn't write this.
Essential means water, sewer, emergency services. Those are essential services.
Yeah, but this is essential pedestrian. I'm not quite sure what an essential pedestrian is.
Those essential. I think
What's the suggestions?
There was, road maintenance was something that was,
Yeah, let's
Was it not-
definitely capture that lots of people value better streets.
better
Yeah,
street.
road maintenance,
Yeah.
better streets,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think
And then
that's-
safety, certainly, I mean, that was something people jumped on right away.
Speed bumps.
Speed bumps.
But I'm wondering if the whole safety thing should have its own statement. And then you talk about you can broaden the services, utility services, you can talk about the other types of services that we currently have or wish to have. And I think, maybe the streets can be coupled with that or can have its own life.
Okay.
But I think that safety should have its own clear value statement.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. A lot of these are somewhat mixed in terms of unevenness. This doesn't really belong with that. I'm gonna try to fix that. So let's see that. I've actually,
So I want to speak to our utilities in terms of, at least I can speak to water, and there's people here who can speak to our sanitation system, but I like, the word adequate to me doesn't really cover what we want out of our water, district. We're dealing with climate change, we're dealing with a lot of changes up in our watershed. To me, it seems that throwing out, I'm just making up terms here, more resilient or something like that, that's beyond adequate, because adequate right now won't cover 20 years from now. We have to plan for protecting our water, drinking waters, beyond adequate at this point. So I would make an argument, whatever the language is, that we take a look at that and address it. Now, the sanitation people may have some other thoughts too about a similar kind of a parallel statement about our sanitation system. And the adequate is what they're after. I don't think it is, but.
I take your meaning, in a job, review, for the year, you never want to see the word adequate. Yes.
And I'll start by seconding what Guy just said about water service, that a value that's much stronger than adequate. I think that's a great idea. What I was thinking about was going back to Dave's observation about essential pedestrian streets. And it seems like that language probably needs some revision, but I imagine part of that is that we value people being able to walk around in the village, but I would like to word it in a way that like encompasses like that would say we would value a actual proper pedestrian route from South Beach to the village, like things like that. So.
And I would say to that, because that was one of the notes that I had, was multimodal bikes, things, right? Golf carts. But where this conversation in that type of value becomes relevant is when we go to ODOT or others for grants later to look at getting money to help maybe do some planning or some improvement work to make those paths. I can point to that in this plan and say, this is something the community wants. It's in their values. And that helps us tremendously when we're writing grants.
Excellent.
Yeah, it seems like right now, I mean, by default, nothing else, streets are our sidewalks.
Yeah.
And I think that was the point of the essential 24 years ago, was the idea that whether we like it or not, or whether we define them as skinny streets, the streets are used by and large by pedestrians, and the cars too.
But we also have to remember back then, we lost the street, and this was the main drag in Neskowin for my whole life. For sure. And people coming to the golf course, you just came in, you didn't go. So, with that gone, I mean, that puts so much more pressure on the rest of the street for everything. I mean, no one, growing up, no one in one district, no one on popular. I mean,
No one.
unless you're going to the house there, it was literally kids and bikes. I mean, no one drove on that street.
No, it's in the mid-90s.
Yeah, well, but it's. That's.
You had a quick comment?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, so in terms of safety, we've talked about public safety, sheriff's office, roads, etc. What other things fall into the category of safety?
Fire hydrants, water supply,
What about,
zoning for residential sprinklers, things like that.
what about natural hazards? Right, when we talk about emergency preparedness. Is that because I'm cheating because I have a copy of your plan out in front of me, but as you'll find as we go through this exercise, natural hazards are not really written in any of the values.
Yeah.
So when we talk about safety, is that also important to the community? Those elements.
I wonder about, naming the volunteer firefighters and EMS responders as well as the CERT folks. So that we can refer to that being important, and I don't know what that would look like, but somehow giving community resource to supporting volunteers for all of those things.
Yeah, that's an excellent, I think sounds like an entire enclave of that we really didn't, one of the first things I got to do when we moved here was, I got to be part of the search. And I had never heard of such a thing, community, that kind of a response from local citizens, I thought that's what I wanted to do. So I had a
I
question.
think that we would all agree that adequate utility services are provided.
Yeah.
That we would endorse
Yeah.
and like to have around. A place where safety is predominant is another value that we would endorse and like to have around. But then you get into, how do you make that happen, or how is it happening
Yeah.
now? Becomes a different question.
Yes, it is, and that's subsequent to what we're doing now.
Right, it leads to that.
But that's an excellent point. These are not just pilot, we are meant to take these ideas and mold them into goals and recommendations. So,
Later this summer.
and by the way, when I write this stuff up, when we as a committee write this stuff up, this is a first pass. And we encourage people to comment on it, add things, tell us we're wrong on something. I've been a professional editor, and you will not hurt my feelings. I have very thick skin. I have some experience of sitting in a room of 300 engineers who all thought I was wrong. So.
And we,
Foolish, maybe, great. Yeah, okay, so. I think we've got some, we uncovered some really good things about safety and the environment. Let's go on to the second point there. A place where a quiet natural beach atmosphere is found in individually owned properties as well as along streets and public property. Now, that could be a bit more controversial now than it was then. So how are people feeling about that? That's a good conversation. Okay, let's take it a little bit at a time. Natural, I don't think anybody's gonna argue against a natural beach environment, otherwise you wouldn't live here. I think that's true?
Yeah.
Okay. So what can we do about that? We have a changing environment. What values do we want to have in terms of the change? Is there anything that comes to mind?
Maybe, what do we mean by quiet?
Well, the ocean can get loud, but I don't think there's much we can do about it.
But like, and I may be in a minority here, but in my household, like, we don't really like the 4th of July, because it's not quiet.
Yeah, I wonder how fireworks fit into, preserving the natural environment and both of those things. In my opinion, it doesn't seem like fireworks fit in there.
I think you're talking about a cultural element that is deep seated in this community that is pretty much difficult to do anything.
Well, in a lot of communities.
But-
it's not us.
Yeah.
Yeah, so. How can we develop something out of this?
And the other thing is that nothing is, it's not 100% of the time, anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, 100% doesn't exist,
Yeah.
right? I think, except on multiple choice tests. Anyway.
So I'm gonna take another crack at saying something possibly provocative, which is that, and also this gets onto the beach somewhat, and the beach is state parks, so that's different, but like we certainly feel like we find too many fires on the beach and sometimes unattended or that smoke from backyard fire sometimes makes the neighborhood around it kind of like smelly and yucky, so and unnatural, so yeah.
You gotta
Okay,
get.
no seconds, but.
How does that reflect the value?
Well, so I am trying to interrogate what do we mean by natural beach atmosphere, and one interpretation might be that like a natural beach does not have fires on it. Yeah, so,
Or it does.
Another tough one too.
yeah, okay.
And does that beach atmosphere only apply to the beach, or does that apply to the community as a whole?
Right.
What is beach atmosphere for people?
It's outside of the-
Playing, you know, volleyball on the beach and for others, it's taking it.
It means floats in your yard.
Well, I mean, you talked about beach atmosphere, I mean, beach access, right? It's important, I think, for everybody here, and that's what the community who beach access. I don't know what atmosphere means, but you could tie in something with beach access.
Well, that's,
I
I
mean,
mean,
that-
we've been doing that, you know, making so emergency vehicles can get down, and you know, that is part of that whole safety, beach access. Getting little boat.
There any part of beach access that isn't being addressed? Or
Well, there are some beach accesses in Neskowin where the people who live near them take the signs down so that nobody knows it's beach access, even though it is, because they don't want people walking next to their house.
I think this puts on a dispute over the ownership of, and who should be maintaining the beach access points.
Interesting.
They are technically county roads.
They are,
And,
Both sides of the Saxons are technically county road.
county roads, and so I know, God knows, how many back 10, 15, 20 years ago, at CAC, arguments over who should maintain those beach access points, so. I don't know, Sarah, if those are done, but I know that we have, this groups ran, Cameron and others have gotten grants to fix up the beach access so that they can, more people can get there, more people in wheelchairs and whatever, can get to there.
County is the answer.
Well,
Well,
with the advent of the riprap,
The safety stuff by-
it's hard to, you know, maintain those access
That's a
points.
safety issue that.
Right, and, you know, cause they get winged up pretty quickly.
And the private property owners have to pay for them, so.
right, so what we did was recently, and
Hello.
3 or 4 years ago, was to get a TLT grant to maintain the beach accesses. Because neither the state nor the county own the most treacherous part, which was going through the riprap. And so anything that we wanted to do, we had to get permission of the adjacent landowners. We did get that on everything but Carlton, which was not really a ramp to the beach, it was just steps. And since we didn't get permission from them at the other end of Carlton, we improved that ramp, which works unless the creek goes to the riprap and back, then you can't get there. But those funds were, funds from the, transit lodging tax. And we applied for it again and we didn't get it. So I don't know, we don't really have any funding to support it, but the issue mostly is nobody claims that no man's land or any responsibility for maintaining it. And so it's difficult to, the only time you can really get improvements is when they go down to fix something, they have to improve it coming out. So that's a kind of roll of the dice, so we may have to look at funding that from our own community funds, like the NCA or something. In 3 or 4 years, it was like $30,000 for all the maintenance on the and projects on those things, so again, we might have to look to ourselves. Because it's a big burden to put on individual landowners, but it's a benefit to everyone and public safety. And if we have the means, it might be that we're using our own funds to solve that problem rather than looking everywhere else for it.
Well,
So
what I,
is this-
quickly, what I would add to that, again, just like grants for multimodal ped paths, we wanted to expand on that as part of the community plan, specifically with the TLT grants, because the year you did get it, I actually went and had a conversation with Lynn Devlin and others to say, this is something that I know is part of the community. You know, and I can point to the values already as they've been written, but teasing that out may help build a stronger case, whether it's TLT or other grants in the future, to point to this planning document to say maintenance of beach accesses is really important, because it also supports goal 10, which is your recreation element.
The rationale, 'cause
So-
that's the win.
So would it be proper to say that the value of the community is for the proper agencies who have responsibility for this to take care of it? Instead of us always having to grumble.
That's kind of a solution as opposed to a value. The value is
Okay,
wanting the maintenance to happen. Now, how we make that happen, that's further down.
okay, but a value is to have someone else pay for it.
Well,
I'm good for you.
the value is the beach and access to the beach, right? So then the question
The
is. how do you-
road
how do you-
owner doesn't
how do you
pay for
keep
it,
that?
state parks don't pay for it, and it's like frankly, they should. Now, again, we always get poverty from Tillamook County. They plead poverty, they truly are the worst roads in the state, 38 out of 38 counties. But poverty notwithstanding, a value for me is to have them take responsibility for what they own.
It's a little bit different than the values we're talking about, but I understand.
Take out atmosphere and put in access, it's missing.
Oh,
there.
okay.
It'll wait for access at your house.
You can walk it.
I'm getting a little tripped up on this one, and where I'm getting tripped up is where it's found in individually owned properties. So are we talking about properties in this statement? Or are we talking about the community members in the statement?
Yeah, that's a great
Well,
question.
So,
Interesting.
because
Yeah.
it just doesn't, to me, it makes no sense on how it's written here. So. A quiet, natural beach atmosphere for properties or for community members? So, right, and then as well as the streets and public property, so this is, to me, it's a property statement, but.
Yeah, well, let me tell you how I interpreted it coming to a
Oh,
code.
please,
Okay, so since this is a land use document,
yeah.
it sort of falls back to everything being a property. And I think, not criticizing the former editors, but I think they sort of lost the idea that it's community values as opposed to the property values, if you will. So I think it's probably not skillfully couched, but I suspect that's what they meant. But they keep coming back to properties as being the common noun. So I took it as a kind of an oversight.
I would interpret it that it's just trying to be inclusive of all the different parts of the community. That's what I think the intent was.
Yeah, I believe that's correct.
The way I read it is that they're saying there should be a quiet, natural beach atmosphere, and I'm gonna read it out of order, on public property, on the streets, and on private property. When they say individually owned properties, they like that means private property. But like that everyone should have like your yard should be nice and natural and beachy. That's what this value is saying by my but
I think it means the behavior of the people in all those different places.
but I do think it's the individually owned properties. That's probably language we don't want to keep. Yeah.
No, yes, you had a comment?
I think that if you look at this, if you want a quiet, natural beach atmosphere, come to Neskowin during the winter. And it's not gonna happen. And by the way, just for the record, I love the 4th of July in Neskowin, Oregon. I like the noise of the 4th of July, because I can't do anything about it. So,
Okay, fair enough. I appreciate that. Okay, any other comments on that? I think we could, this is good fodder for editing. I think,
Actually, how would you improve that statement?
Me?
Mm-hmm.
Don't put me on the spot, but I'll come up with one.
You're gonna do it later.
Yeah, happy to.
I'd like
Yeah, I
to interject something. I didn't,
yes, go ahead.
okay, my name's Joe Lee, but I'm listening even though you couldn't see me, and didn't want you to watch me chewing my dinner.
Thank you.
Listed things like safety, road improvement, beach access. What comes to my mind of coming to Neskowin for 50 years is a difference between the people who choose to live up on Slab Road. They're more independent minded. They're property. They're out there. They know there's somewhat more on their own. This is where I've always lived in the suburbs, and
I'm afraid you're breaking up and we're not hearing everything you're saying.
Yeah, put it on the chat.
Can you put it on the chat?
Yeah, can you put it in the chat, because you're breaking up and it's about every other syllable we're hearing.
May not understand about the chat.
Okay.
Looks like you froze. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
He's making.
okay, well, I guess I'll just shut up.
Okay, I'm told you're about 3 blocks away. Maybe you could come by and tell us. Perhaps, if you can. I'm sorry, but we really couldn't understand what you said. I heard something about Slab Creek Road. And that's about all I heard. Okay.
What's the difference between living in the suburbs and living up on Slab Creek Road? I feel like Neskowin has been attractive because it's been more like living up on Slab Creek Road than it has been being the suburbs. And the more we talk about improving the roads and then to go to barriers to keep people from driving faster when potholes are the best way to keep people from driving faster. Anyway,
I think we got
my value and would keep it more like where individuals are more on their own. We're not asking more and more public services to make it more and more like suburbia.
okay. If I can summarize, basically you're saying living on Slab Creek Road is much different than living in a suburb, and the Slab Creek Road feel is what you would prefer, and that's a value. Did I get that right?
That is the attractive value for the greater Neskowin in community. And I would hate to see it become more and more suburbia.
Okay, so not to become suburbia is a value.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
I think we got it. That was hard to do, but I think we got it. Thank you. Appreciate it. And any other comments on that?
I don't think this value is achievable.
Which one?
The one about natural beach atmosphere, quiet natural beach atmosphere, I don't think that's achievable. Not in this
Well, it's an
day and age.
aspiration. It is not necessarily always achieved. But if we want to go that direction as opposed to having McDonald's here or something.
Well, if you're talking about, no, if you're talking about economic development, that's different than a quiet beach atmosphere, which, well, I don't know, I'm not experiencing that quiet beach atmosphere very much.
So what if you took the word quiet out of it? Would that,
Yeah,
that work
that'd
for
be
you?
good.
Okay,
Noisy beach atmosphere.
all right, fair enough. You've said that a couple of times and I finally got it. We'll take quiet out of it.
Well, look.
Well,
Yeah.
okay, we'll talk about it.
It's an aspiration. Earl, can we still get it in the winter?
In the deep of winter when it's snowing.
Okay.
It is very quiet.
Okay,
Try the next.
yeah, we're gonna try the next one. Okay. Well, this should be controversial as well. Place where environment and beauty of natural setting is prized. Now, I'm not quite sure how. So what would be a value that would support that? I mean, what values are there?
So I have a thought, which is not comprehensive, it's very specific, but I have been noticing a lot of wildlife situations. Like bears getting into garbage.
Yeah.
There have been mountain lions around here, and like some people are like, oh my God, mountain lions, that's so wonderful, and some people are afraid, and I think like, what? Rabbits.
Big in our village.
They were
And
here first and
yeah, I agree, and I think it would be, I would like to have a value that actually called out like how we feel about wildlife and how it interacts with our community. So,
What are people's thoughts about that wildlife?
I think we need to respect that wildlife have a right to be in this environment and here.
yes, I respect that they get to eat all my azaleas. Yeah, so I just, I mean, they were here first. It's food.
That's what we're at,
I like this statement, you know, I think it's, for me personally, it's part of the reason I enjoy Neskowin. You know, it does have a natural, it's has a natural setting, you know, and it's beautiful, and the wildlife's part of it. And you know, I know where my other home is, I can't walk out my front door and you know, startle a few deer. Like I can here.
Yes. One of the things that, again, this is where values may connect with some kind of recommendations that come out of this plan is that, is lighting, you know, when you're trying to enjoy a sunset at night and there's many lights out there that are on or during the course of the night. When you get the moon out and you're looking across Neskowin and people leave a lot of night lights on. I know some communities have adopted shielded light requirements. I think the county.
I'm working on one for Oceanside right now.
Okay, so the,
Dark sky you're talking about.
well, whether it's dark sky, but it could be just shielded lights, anything that protects, in my mind, the evening and nighttime of the beauty, the natural beauty that we have here. And so there's where a value could in fact translate into safety.
Yeah.
But safety is,
Well, lightness doesn't necessarily mean.
yeah, I mean, interesting, light can point down and, you know, rather than stuff.
Yeah.
We're not being safe for everyone. The other thing I just want to point out is there's, south of us, I think it may have been Yachts, it may have been some other, Alex, you may remember this, some community that were, there was a large, their natural beauty and view was the mountain just to the east of 101. And there was some clear cutting that was gonna happen, and people tried to fight it as based on, it was really gonna destroy kind of the whole natural feel of the community. Now, I don't think you can, especially in Oregon, it's gonna be hard, it's gonna be a hard fight to stop somebody from clear cutting. But, you know, our natural beauty can change here because we have a lot of natural resources around here, especially forests. So, just something to keep in mind.
with regard to people uptight about the bears, the Neskowin garbage company has offered to, you know, distribute those bear trap garbage cans that I think I certainly can't open one, but maybe a 9-year-old could. I mean, they're available and they're in and out of all the homes I've seen here.
Yeah,
So
they
they're.
chewed on quite frequently when I walk past it, I noticed. Yes.
So where I have seen this value come into play and carry out from value to implementing ordinances is the wildlife refuge and the wetlands that are within your community here, right? They're part of your golf course that extend north to, the mapped boundary is the southerly boundary of Sahalee. So I think that that is something that this value points to. And how that's carried out is there's actually an additional 25-foot setback from development. From the border of that wetland, that mapped wetland that extends through the golf course. And that's unique to Ocean, or to Neskowin, excuse me. There aren't those types of wetland boundary setbacks in most areas. You can't develop it, you have to be out. But where this came into play is that there's an ordinance requirement. You guys remember, just north of Neskowin North, there was a proposal to add a subdivision. Well, the reason why that became extremely difficult to plat was because of that additional 25-foot setback from the boundary of that wetland. And so, I would say when we talk about environment and beauty, that's one of those elements that came, that was folded into that report.
Seems like the ambiguous word in number 3 is environment. It seems like we're talking about a respect for the beauty and the natural setting. So, I mean, I don't even know exactly what environment means.
But it means lots of things to lots of people, right?
Well, right, it's two. I mean, so if we have respect for the beauty and the natural setting, then there would be recommendations that would come out of that value.
Yeah.
That could more specifically address environment, like dark sky, light, or bear-proof garbage cans. Or, I don't.
Just living with wildlife.
Living with wildlife,
Yeah,
yes, living, it seems like,
Like,
my
that's a good
experience is
phrase,
that I
like
have to
that.
adapt, because they don't
Okay.
adapt. They have adapted.
Well, they have it pretty well.
Yeah, they're very late.
You have to be eager.
They're stuck.
Just have a sea level.
Yes.
I don't know.
Well, that's not.
It's,
Letting me out.
please,
Outside.
Okay.
yes,
Comments?
comment.
I don't know what the current setbacks and other land use laws say, so maybe it's already taken care of, but I wonder if the ocean needs more protection and the community masculine surrounding here.
But what needs
Right.
protection?
So,
I think-
and also the same slots.
So yes, there are ordinances there and they come in different ways. But I think, Liz, what you checked on was instead of using the word prize, to use the word protected. And I think that that's another thing as part of a value. Do you prize it? Do you want to protect it? They're all very different things. Do you want to protect the bears so they can continue to eat the garbage?
Protecting them means they don't need our air.
Support a mountain lion or two. To balance the situation.
So Sarah, remind me in 3 mile zone off of Neskowin. What industrial uses are allowed? Okay. Wave energy, wind energy?
Yeah, so that's your little 19 policy that the county actually has not adopted as part of our comp plan, but it still exists.
So it does have, you can be up at this part, I thought the south part.
No,
of the
it's,
state, up here as well.
so there's the territorial fee plan, and then there's the goal 19 element, which talks about wave and ocean energy. We can have a value for it, but largely that is all state and federal permitting that they're not. They prep the reality check of what we can and can't do. They may not ask us, but you can certainly provide feedback.
What about cable landings for like wave energy?
So those, we actually have a determination that the landings themselves that come onto our shore are utilities.
So you can tear them more.
Right, yeah. Yeah, because it's not. The landing itself is typically a manhole, right? And everything's underground, so you don't see it. The pieces that you're seeing visually often are actually done through state and federal permitting because our jurisdiction meaning our land use program ends at that state beach zone line.
And
But you can still have a value. It
Yeah.
still means something, right? And you don't know when it'll come into play.
right, and there's construction also, so that we might. I don't know what the community plan would have to say about like. The construction that would happen around. Stuff that was being done offshore and the onshore component that would be in our community, but it's something to think about.
And I would say in that term, just kind of to help, this is where we start putting our compartmentalizing different elements of development.
Mhm.
Construction is different than use.
Mhm.
So that's something that we'll probably delineate quite a bit as well.
What about riprap? Like, do we want to talk about not adding additional?
That's all under the state's jurisdiction. But again, I think going back to the conversation about values and what you value, you can still put something in this document that talks about value of the beach, value of, you see it as an asset, it's a recreational, asset to you. It, that riprap does help mitigate from erosion if it's maintained, right? So there's different pieces there. I think your entire shoreline has a goal 18 exception for riprap, which is why you see it. But to your point of what you're asking, where that would become relevant is if we ever had to do goal 18 exceptions and look at other areas of riprap.
That's true north of Corvallis and south of North Neskowin.
Let me look and see.
I don't think.
I'll look and
That
see.
wasn't something that had to be built or
Platted.
by
Platted.
1970 or 70.
Developed is the word,
Yeah.
and it's defined. Let me look at that because some of that may come in. Yeah, that'll be my home. What is goal 18? Goal 18 is the beaches and dune goal of the statewide land use planning system. So that's where all of our laws trickle down for development eligibility on beaches and dunes.
Oh, I see.
Okay.
So part of the document that we have now kind of speaks not very clearly about that, but there's a section that's called goals.
Mhm.
And then how we address those goals is listed there. So what we're talking about is addressing those in the goal section. We're in the value section right now. When we get to the goals,
So I appreciated your comment and then Sarah's follow-up about a value to protect the natural setting. I like that. That is a value. Because I value the natural setting. And I wish to protect it. Even though the deer eat myself. So.
okay,
Yeah.
so it's not clear to me which,
So that's number 3.
Someone.
Matt,
Oh,
that has an influence.
Oh, man.
go ahead.
Yeah, I put my hand up way back, during the lighting section. And
Sorry.
haven't heard from since, but, I just, I wanted to speak about, lighting, exterior lighting and bird migration, which is vitally important because birds migrate mostly at night, and upward pointing lighting really disturbs their migration routes, and it's a huge value to have lighting that does not show upward but shows downward. So that was one of the points I had, and another one, since it on beyond that, was the bear-proof garbage cans. And my wife and Lori and I were walking up Neskowin North for yesterday, and we went by and we saw these bear-proof garbage cans, and we thought, what a cool idea. And I tried one of them, and it just opened right up. It didn't work. Tried another one, opened right up. So out of the 5 cans we tried, only one of them actually locked. So I would encourage people that own these bare garbage cans to make sure they work. And the one that did work had bare teeth marks all the way around it. So, yeah, and one more thing.
Matthew,
Yeah.
to your point, we've learned with ours that you need to spray WD-40 on that little interior thing you put your finger in. So much humidity here that it gets sticky in the same way your bicycle chain gets sticky. And so if you just, when you notice it's not locking, just spray some WD-40 and it works. And probably that's gonna be the thing that's gonna wear out on those cans. So Ace will probably have a replacement part that we can order. So it's my guess, but I've discovered that, and our garbage can does have bare teeth marks in it.
Great.
So we're not gonna put WD-40 as a value.
No, it's user error, the fact that they don't work.
Well, education, user
Yes.
education
Yes.
probably is a good thing.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that.
Okay, appreciate it.
And Bill put a comment in the chat, which we could read aloud.
Wow.
Yeah, that lights also affect gray whale migration, so.
Didn't know that.
So a lot of comments on the wildlife coexistence values.
Okay. So I think that's a whole new section that we haven't had. That's good.
I wanted to follow up on something Guy said a little bit ago. And this is a value that if people resonated with it, it's not reflected in the current values, which is, so Guy was asking about industrial uses off the coast, like possible wave energy. So in the future, if there is a serious wave energy resource off the coast, that might provide us energy security, which we currently do not have. Like currently, we're like at the very end of a power line coming from a zillion miles away. Like our energy supply is very, very precarious, and if it was done really well, like energy that we could get directly with our own substation from a wave resource, like we might still have power after a Cascadian event or something like that. And I don't know how much this fits in a land use document, but like we could say we value like resilience in terms of things like power and other sort of like, I don't know the right way to express it in the value, but I think there's a value there.
Energy security.
Yeah.
Alternative energy.
Yeah.
We value alternative energy sources.
As-
But does that mean we're gonna have windmills on the beach?
There's no direct implication. It's the way to think about what's possible.
That could be solar panels on your house.
Yeah, right, so it could be all kinds of things. Self-sufficiency must be on your watershed. Right?
Okay, I think, have we exhausted the beauty of-
And Bill has his hand up.
Okay. Yes,
You're muted, Bill.
It's still muted.
No, he's on, but we can't. Okay, there you go.
As far as I know, the Wainema Beach is still on the list of areas designated for development for wave energy, one of the 4 areas approved by LCDC. And that, whenever it was, 2015, 2013, that created a lot of blowback because of the effect on the viewscape. Charlie Seiko and Dave Yamamoto were part of a suit related to that. But it also comes with a high level of onshore infrastructure. The wave energy devices, I think a lot of them basically pump water on shore, and on shore, then there are turbines sort of things that convert the water under pressure to electricity. So it might sound clean, but it has a fair number of negatives that go along with it.
Okay. Thank you. So, can we go on from that? We're doing pretty good, but we got about a half hour, so we might have to
Come back Saturday.
come back Saturday. We'll have half the list then. Okay, the village predominantly made up of private residences with a minimum of commercial activity and respect for appropriate construction guidelines. Appropriate is pretty much a loaded word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But how do people think about that? I mean, we have a very small commercial area. I mean,
I think the train has left the station back with regard to the construction sites. There are multiple, 3-story homes on tiny little postage stamp yards. I don't know how to keep that from continuing.
That's you guys, I mean,
But that's your zoning ordinances too, right? And going back to existing development, you have a lot of homes that were built that don't meet setbacks, but ultimately there's room to expand them in areas where they still can meet setbacks, which is also then running to the growth. And you have a 35-foot height limit though, so that was, and Neskowin has a unique way that you measure building height. So when we talk about appropriate construction, those setbacks and height are in your lot coverage, you have a 70% lot coverage maximum. So I think that's what those are pointing to.
Well, it seems that some of the properties, or the newer ones that I've noticed, have used that 70%, 30% ratio and put a huge deck on the 30% that's outdoors, which there's one right on my block that has that. So the entire lot is filled with the home, except that 30% of it is outside.
So is a deck not considered part of the home?
Apparently, it wasn't.
So part of the challenge with the program is that especially if it's a deck that's lower to the ground, there's a height that exempts building permits. So sometimes people they can build or expand their decks and they don't need a permit for it. If someone were to call that to my attention, zoning still applies. But as you know, we don't patrol your streets, so, sometimes, especially backyards, that stuff happens all the time.
Yeah, the backyard.
Oh, I see, so it's the kind of thing where deck out the back door, where it didn't exist before.
Or we leave, shocking, we leave, and sometimes people do extra work to their house after we're gone. Sometimes we find out about it and sometimes we don't.
so, but isn't there a larger state, not about decks, but predominantly private residences, isn't there coming down the pike a state thing for affordable housing that is a statewide thing that trumps any county? Is that, do we as a community have any say in that?
So there is Senate Bill 406, so that'll be part of the work that we are doing for mental housing in Neskowin. I have an entire presentation on that. So
Okay, I'm jumping ahead.
No, but you're tracking that right. But the other thing is when we talk about appropriate construction guidelines, I would also keep in mind there's OSHA requirements, there's building codes, there's other things. So in looking at the value, what is the relevance of that term and what does that mean to this community?
Yeah, so, and an example is that the appropriate, having the entire property covered with some sort of structure would be something.
That plus the 3-story
Yeah.
buildings, the private residences. Tiny.
So a 35-foot height limit includes a third story?
It can, 10 feet for sure.
And there's no pitched roof requirement. I mean, obviously, when folks come to the counter, we try to steer them away from flat roofs. That doesn't, it's not really conducive to our area.
Oh, because if you have a flat roof, then it's lower.
And it can go right up to 35 feet. Right, and it's measured from the ground. So one thing about Neskowin that I really like is actually the way you measure building heights. And you guys did a really good job. There's a unique methodology to the calculation for that, specific to Neskowin, that other areas of the county don't have. And I think that fell into your appropriate construction guidelines.
That's good.
Yeah.
So the 35 feet is measured from the ground or the top of the foundation?
The ground. And we can go into that, like, I mean, I think again, there's a lot of steps in this process as we go through this process. We'll have those opportunities where I can like explain when we get to the ordinances, how they apply and what they mean. But just going back, just to help Tom keep the conversation on focus, you know, I'm curious to what the community thinks of understanding there's building codes. You know, there's geologic hazard report requirements, et cetera. What else about appropriate building codes would the community still find relevant as a value?
I think one thing that, and I know it's in the code about parking on your front yard, and I think that we have homes here where they kind of parallel park, not parallel, well, they park along their front, so they can stack cars along. And I know there's already, there is a rule about your driveway can only take X amount from
Correct.
what the one goes.
25% for
25%, right. So I don't know what in the building code there is. I think
There's not.
there's nothing to prevent that.
No, so right, so one of the other examples, I think, of appropriate construction guidelines that's implemented through ordinances is you guys actually have a maximum driveway width. Maybe it's minimum, I think it's a maximum, 12 feet or 25% of the width of the lot.
Right.
Because at some point it was decided we want to limit the size of the approach. Right, and maybe that then lends to more landscaping and other things, which then is supported by other values that are here about beachy atmosphere or the natural setting.
Now, am I right thinking that STRs have a limit? They're not allowed to parks on the front.
That is a different program.
I understand.
So, yeah,
But they have, they're limited as to what they can do.
there are parking limitations that do not apply to residences that do not have a license.
Right.
But it's more restrictive rather than less.
That is correct. It
Okay.
is far more restrictive, actually.
Yeah.
Okay,
I think we all agree to that value that's there.
yeah,
Mhm.
So I don't know if it needs to be changed other than perhaps the wording of appropriate construction guidelines. I mean, I think we all are, at least I am, is that it's private residences with minimum commercial activities. Period, or we would write the,
Yeah,
reword the construction, I mean, yeah, the construction piece of it.
yeah, I don't know what that appropriate thing means. So like to me, when I think about that, you know, one thing that makes the village charming is that the houses are not, you know, 4,000 square feet. So if someone were to buy a property with a small house on it and build a 4,000 square foot house, that's not really in character with the village. So, I mean, I think if somebody wants that kind of house, perhaps the village is not the place for them to build.
So can I expand on that just a little bit?
Yes, so that's what I value.
And I'm so glad that you brought this up, because another thing that I would encourage the committee and the community to think about, all of our conversations so far have been about the village and the beach. But going back to the question of where is the boundary? Where does all this apply? We have a much larger area. So one of the things we need to think about is application of these values, or we split some of them out, right? So I think, yeah, I completely.
Yes,
agree.
so I mean,
Yeah.
it's appropriate to build a house like that, for instance, in Neskowin Hills. It's even appropriate off of South Beach Road. Because
The lots are bigger, the lotting patterns. are-
right.
They're already there.
Well, yeah, so I mean, it's larger, and I mean, it's just in character, it doesn't, it doesn't change the character, is what I'm trying to say. But it does change the character if you're next to, you know, a 2-bedroom, you know, 1,000 square foot house that was built in 1927. So I think what makes, you know, and we have a small house in South Beach, you know, it's only 1,900 square feet, and we're like, I guess it's because.
Go bigger.
I guess it was because it was 1994, and everybody now who is buying and building, they're building bigger houses.
Not that much bigger.
And so I don't wanna see that continue. You know, so I don't know how to express that as a value. I just,
Well, we can say that in harmony with the character of the village, something like that.
or how about not the village, just
But, well,
the surrounding community.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's so like Sahali has, you know, they have really large houses. Up there on Ocean Ridge, they have those are in character with the community, right? You could even argue that on a 9,000 square foot lot, you know, on Proposal Rock Loop, you know, it's possible to build a bigger house than you might in the village. Because it's in character with the community. So-
Immediate neighbor.
Immediate surroundings.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So how can we I mean, I don't know if I'm alone in that,
No,
but
you're not alone.
yeah, but how can that be expressed?
So I don't think we can write this down, but what's coming to me is that like, we don't want obnoxious houses.
Well, where, like.
Well, do we want obnoxious houses anywhere? And a house is obnoxious in like a different house is obnoxious in different surroundings.
But
But
who decides what's
that's why I'm just sort of putting that out there as like, is this what we really need? Because we can't write that down, but that is, I'm saying the quiet part out loud.
Like, does anybody know Peacock Lane in
Yeah.
Northeast
Yeah.
Portland?
It's just a few blocks from there.
Okay.
But you know, what makes that so charming? People aren't building McMansions there.
Okay, I think we got that. You had a comment?
Well, I think one of the things to keep in mind is if we're talking about what would be considered less than desirable in some neighborhoods, it's gonna be perfectly in character with surrounding homes in other neighborhoods. And if I understand this area of Neskowin Village properly, it's completely unincorporated and no HOA is involved. And so when you're talking about land use planning, which my understanding of the process is, we're talking about these value statements will eventually develop into a package put together to talk about land use planning. And so we need, my opinion is that as an organization or as a community group having this conversation, keeping in mind that land use planning for an unincorporated area is going to be much different than land use planning for homes that are built within the confines of an HOA. And so people that live within the confines of an HOA are certainly going to be well aware of what's considered appropriate and within the character of the community, versus when you choose to live in an unincorporated area. You know, when we lived in another state, we intentionally lived in an unincorporated area because I didn't want all the municipal ordinances and I didn't want an HOA telling me what to do and so forth. You know, so I think it's important as the conversation goes forward to kind of circle back that all of these personal preferences, I think, are absolutely valid and important conversations to have. But what we need to look at is how does that impact land use planning?
Well, we're not quite there yet, so we're still talking about what we like, what we value. So we don't, it's very tempting, and I know it's tempting on my part, to get into the implementation, but we're really not talking about implementation. We're talking about what we value, what we want.
Other stuff we have to sift out.
Of course,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I would say values in terms of the community as a whole,
It's not.
right? Because I know it's hard.
So we have 15 minutes more.
The village is the most concentrated area. You know, there's a lot of elements to the village that I think will pull focus, but we do need to think about the community.
So we're actually beginning to run out of time, strangely enough. I was afraid we were gonna be here by ourselves. I'm very, very heartened that everybody's here. Maybe we have a little bit of time for some values that are not here, that we can just, if you've got something in your mind that you might wanna have added. A lot of these things, yes.
I was just thinking of one specific thing that is rather troublesome, in the village here. And in Hawk Creek, when I first moved here, Hawk Creek was so beautiful and full of wild birds and open and airy. And now it's just a little swamp. It's all congested, and I know there's all these environmental things, but I just want to state such a sad thing that we can't clear that creek up and have it running and beautiful again.
So a beautiful
A beautiful
creek bed.
that adds to the great charm of Neskowin.
Okay. So that's
Part of the creek is now running,
Yeah,
it's not in Hot Creek, it goes under the highway.
it's a mess.
Full disclosure, the
Yeah,
Beaver Dam
it's a mess.
flooding me out on
I
the east
think,
side.
I think
But
that
the
the
creek-
humans are more important than animals.
The creek,
Although I love animals, I love animals.
but the creek,
Please.
the creek is flowing. It goes under the highway and it actually, most of it now is going out by the wayside under that bridge. So it's
What a
very little
mess.
water is going, so that part here doesn't.
Very little water is going to the
Suggestion
ocean.
For
No,
something,
it's going to the ocean, it's just,
for another
there's
comment.
different routes now.
But Margaret, you're talking about all the trees and stumps that are clogging the. clogging-
Yes,
Huge
I
ones.
have a suggestion. Common sense for a village. Common sense.
is not very common.
Yeah. Things got clogged because, the older owners, when, the Martin and Jean Carver went in and they
Cleaned that.
kind of clear cut all the logs out of there. Well, it was an environmental mess because of the machinery they used. And so they were disallowed from getting rid of all the logs that came in from the ocean. And I don't know, once or twice, I think I've seen a giant machine in there since from the county, I guess.
Yeah, the county.
Pulling them out, but there's still a ton of them there.
So a value is maintenance of
Maintenance of the creek. Is that what
creek
you want?
and the beaches, I assume as well.
Just common sense.
Okay, so that's a value, that's good.
And open, yes.
I have a thought, you know, I think back about why I attracted to Neskowin, why I came here, I've been here since I was a kid off and on, and, so, you know, really, we came as a family, and I still come here to, you know, socialize and recreate with family and friends, and, you know, and that speaks to a specific goal, I think, that, you know, on recreation, but, we've talked about the beach, and obviously that's a big part of it. We're sitting here in the clubhouse of the golf course, that's part of it. I like to, hike. I know others like to bike. Certainly, things on the water, whether it be boats, kayaks, or surfing, or boogie boarding. I mean, you know, you see people doing those things all the time, and so I think that's a big part of who we are.
Part of your community identity that you value.
Yeah, I think to add to kind of Skip's point, I mean, that was one of the things is that, you know, recreation, I think is a huge value, I think, for a lot of people in this community who, you know, enjoy walking, biking, you know, strolling with their kids, along the streets.
I'm not
Yeah.
sure, yeah.
Yeah, and, you know, this is a place where I feel like children come and play. And this is, they're outside, they're on the beach, they're walking the streets, so it's like meeting other new friends here. They're not just inside on their computers or gaming or on their phones. But it is a place where I think kids are free to play here, and doing it somewhat.
Do we say they're allowed to go feral here?
Yeah.
So-
That way, yeah, so, yeah, so.
So what I'm hearing is really community, something that a value is community interaction.
Well, or beyond that too, I think walkability is what, you know, I mean, that's talked about in planning use documents.
That's right.
Pedestrian friendly and walkability, and that's a value that isn't explicit in these values. And so I don't know what that means with skinny streets, you know. There's a new sweatshirt at the trading post about slowing down. You all gotta go look at it. But anyway, I mean, it means that we're more pedestrian friendly than we are car friendly.
And the word recreate or recreation is not currently in your values anywhere, which is fascinating. That did not make it in years ago, because you're all still here and you're all doing the same. So definitely something
Yeah.
about recreation.
Yeah, that's good.
Isn't there a statement
Yeah.
about?
I'm sorry to interrupt. One thing that nobody has talked about here is the value of the Neskowin golf course. And I feel very strongly that the Neskowin golf course is an incredibly beautiful and important part of Neskowin. And I think I don't know if this fits in with the community plan or not, but it is a very important part of Neskowin, and if we can fit it in with the community plan, I think it's very important because it's been a feature of Neskowin since way before my time. And
Yeah, I don't recall that being in there at all, so that's a good add.
It is.
But I agree with you, Matthew. I think it's a value. If for no other, even if you don't play golf, it has value as a gathering place.
Here we are. Yeah, well, yeah, we are. Yes.
One of the you know, the true values of the course is not just the golf, but in the wintertime, when this course floods, it is one of the most beautiful wildlife refuges there is. And I've been a birder for a long time, and I see a more variety of birds on the Neskowin golf course than I see in a lot of other places. So, you know, that's another reason to preserve and support our golf course.
Good. We got that. That's excellent. Thank you.
Yeah.
You had a comment.
Yeah, well, there are two other things that I haven't seen mentioned here. One is Neskowin Valley School, and the other is diversity.
I didn't hear this.
Diversity.
Diversity. Okay.
Like different colored skin, different languages, different genders, all of that.
That could be an aspiration.
Yes.
Value.
Huge aspiration. Diversity value.
Yeah.
We value it.
Yeah.
Okay, we're just saying we value it.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist here.
We're not gonna legislate it, though.
Well, I think there's lots of visitors on the beach.
Okay.
And what a shame it was during COVID when they said people couldn't come and visit. They closed Neskowin. Only the people that lived here could go to the beaches, which was ridiculous. Everyone should come to the beach.
I love that.
Heal.
That was great.
Liz, I think children in their education is a value.
Yeah.
Second from the
I,
bottom,
I saw that.
targeted to Neskowin Valley.
Okay.
One thing
But
that's
maybe it's
happened.
worth mentioning, that's not high school specific.
Sure. One thing that's happened, I think, that Neskowin has proven over the years, certainly the 20 years that I've been here, is that when there are issues, problems, whatever, the community has come together and resolved them. I thought there was something in our values statement about that we as a community participate in resolving our, whatever challenges or issues that we have. I mean, it's been
That's
harder.
number 7.
Yeah, so I think it's harder since COVID. It's when COVID kind of changes to this hybrid and we stopped meeting, you know, kind of in place. So I think we have somehow, I don't have a statement in front of me, but we want to emphasize that how we meet together.
That goes back to the community interaction that we talked about a little bit earlier, that we value, that's a big value.
And I think Matt raised his hand again.
And, okay, after Matt.
Okay.
Matt?
You don't see it.
Thank you.
You put his hand down.
It's been up for a long time.
Okay, so, here's,
Yeah, part of the diversity that we're talking about, and also part of this value where we place children and their education as a value. We don't really have any children here, and the reason we don't, at least in part, is because we really don't have housing that is affordable by families who have children. And you know, part of the vibrant community is to have that kind of housing available, at least for workforce housing, if not for low-income housing. I'd love to see that part of our value statement here, that we'd like to have a wider range of housing choices available, because of affordability.
okay.
Yeah, and it's an economic diversity as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that goes to 406, right?
And just because Dave's here and he's talking about that, I just also, you guys have fantastic planning commission member as part of your community. You also have this incredible housing commission member in Dave. And he's done some tremendous work for the housing commission, so thank you. I appreciate what you said.
It's so hard when you compete in a community like this, any coastal community. You know, I really value, and I brought this up at the planning commission the other day, what Lincoln City has done to increase housing for people who live in, I mean, people who work there.
Yes.
And it's so, I mean, I don't know how Neskowin does that. I mean, Pacific City is at least started with the Kingfisher apartments and other things that looking at, but yeah, I don't know what Neskowin can do.
I mean, is there, Sarah, is there any land that meets qualifications for, like along up 101 out of town along that little stretch there?
Yeah, we've got some areas, yeah. But I think like to what you guys are talking about is a value, maybe balancing diverse community needs. Yeah, because I think that's a big part of what we're talking about.
Well, I noticed there's a house in South Beach that has a bottom level apartment. And I noticed the for rent sign has disappeared, so evidently it's a new construction.
I know which one you're talking.
You know the
about.
one I'm talking about, the big gray one?
Yeah.
So, but, and I agree with you.
And that one is legal, by the way.
Yeah, why didn't I? I'm sure it does.
As opposed to?
Well, next. Okay, but that is a little bit in conflict with value number 4. See, if we're going to meet, housing needs for a variety of people, then maybe that's in conflict, made up of private residences.
But private residences, sorry to interrupt, and I got stuck on this when we were going over that particular item. Multifamily housing is made up of multiple units of private residences.
Okay.
So, so you can have
So it's still,
multifamily housing and there's still private residents.
So a fourplex in
your, I think you're private single family.
Correct.
you're right, I equated private residence with a single family home.
Yeah.
But you could have a fourplex
Sure.
and it could still be a private residence.
Yeah. Okay, or you can have a basement apartment or a mother-in-law unit, and it's still a private residence. Okay. So what's the opposite of a private residence?
Public
A
housing.
hotel. Oh, well, we have like 5 of those. I mean.
None of them are.
Oh, they're condos. Oh,
They're all private.
they're also raw.
Yeah, it's all private.
It's all private.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
They were all. Okay.
Not the 4 Gs.
Okay. I think we better wind down so we, before 8, we inform about the next meetings, et cetera. Thank you, Tom. So, we'd like to continue this conversation with you over the next number of months. And, one of our questions is, how often do we meet in order to keep the conversation going, but not just make you really sick of land use planning talk? But we're gonna try to do this a couple of times every other week. So we're meeting on Saturday here at 10 a.m. And we're gonna try and continue this conversation. We didn't make it through these. And we got some new fresh ideas. That's what we're feeding on here. We're just getting your responses. We're getting them from left and right field, but we're collecting them so that we can digest and bring these back to you in the form of values that you can mess around with those too. So, we'd like to continue to see you coming here and gathering and sharing ideas and bring back ideas to you to see if those are what you were thinking and how that's working. So I'd encourage you to come Saturday, and then we will be, where's my piece of paper that has all those meetings?
Saturday meeting hybrid, or is it all Zoom?
Same as this.
Same as this, we'll continue to do this as long as we can get people to come and talk and share. We found that we felt like this is the way we'd like to hear from you, rather than everybody on a screen somewhere that's walking off to get a glass of water or something. So this is kind of old school. We can integrate that with the Zoom calls, although we have just a few colleagues on the Zoom call. We'd really like to continue to have this dialogue with you about this. So Saturday is the next meeting here at 10 a.m. And then we're gonna start. Well, we have a third one here in April on 20th. No, that's just our meeting. That's just,
I think,
is that not?
That's
true
Saturday.
anymore?
that's Saturday.
Oh, that's Saturday. I'm sorry. I was like going,
We're on.
a third one? No, the first one was on April 13th. Sorry, I'm messing up here.
Okay.
So Saturday, if you could come, then we will start again in May, on May 2nd. So you get a little reprieve to digest this yourselves. But please encourage others who think might be interested in this, and we hope to see you again on Saturday. And we really appreciate you coming out this evening and sharing your thoughts, so they can this community plan can reflect what our community feels about this.
And
This Saturday, yes, Lynn,
spread the word too, spread the word to get people here.
yeah. Oh,
I just want to be sure that people participating have a clear understanding of the timeline of the process. And the process will conclude in adoption and submittal in March, the first quarter of 2025. But our product, the community plan, will be very close to completion in November. So just so you know the importance of getting people out to attend these meetings, because they go on for a finite period. We have a deliverable and we have a schedule to meet with the county. So keep that in mind when you're talking to people about their availability to come and share.
Sure.
And then what's the date in May?
May,
For this sort of thing?
May 2nd, and May 4th. So it's
Is that
another
on the
deal.
email you sent out? It was all.
Yeah,
That one hasn't been sent out yet,
yeah.
so.
We will definitely notify you and send you reminders and
Yes.
everything, but we wanted you to get an idea of what we're doing.
Check the webpage, that's a great job.
All right, thank you very much, and thanks to the courthouse for making itself available.
Like just
The secretary will be actually. Read the meeting.
I've been on your website.
Not mine.
Yeah, I'm keeping all the.
Yeah, and you.
21. Oh, no.